And what I talked about in the book is actually, again, it's the trust equation, which is something that 3 Harvard Business School professors put together. And look, and you can tell that it's Harvard Business School stuff because it's just dead clever. So, if you've got to get a pen and write down the equation, they formulated trust into an equation, which is T, trust, equals C plus R plus I divided by S. Okay, so trust equals credibility, know your stuff. Reliability, do what you say you're going to do. Intimacy, be sensitive and careful with people's information. Right, okay, I mean, that's not a big deal. Lots of salespeople do that sort of stuff. Why? Because then I'll sell more. Right, this is where the trust will get broken down, because it's divided by S. The S is self-orientation. So again, you don't need to be a mathematician to know if you've got a big number at the bottom, it's going to pull the whole score down. So when you're not orientated toward yourself, you're orientated towards others, you're doing it with other people's best interests at heart, that is your biggest trust builder.
Welcome to this episode of the MedTech 101 podcast. And I know usually we tend to talk about medical devices and a few service providers, but today we're taking that approach again, which basically combines both in terms of how do you increase sales or how can you help your sales for MedTech companies or for MedTech devices, but at the same time, also giving you just the overview scope on what sales is, because it's something that I've really wanted to talk about for a very long time. I started in R&D and kind of sort of like moved into sales, and it's a transition which I quite enjoyed a lot. So I'm still like an engineer at heart, but on the other side of me, I do enjoy sales. So today I've got Fred Copestake, who's the founder of Brandis, now which is a company he's been running for over 20 years now. And he's also the author of several books, which I'll be putting the links below for you guys to go and look out. But yeah, so today that's what we're going to be talking about on this podcast, and it's going to be fun. So yeah, welcome to the podcast, Fred.
Well, thank you very much for inviting me. It's it is going to be fun. There's plenty of stuff we can talk about, which is going to help your listeners do a better job with some of the brilliant stuff that they're doing anyway.
Yeah, thank you very much. I think even before we even get started with your background and everything, I think it's just interesting to talk about how we met. Really, I think the NTU, for those people who do not, NTU it stands for Nottingham Trent University, which is a university I went to. Recently did a sales academy, and Fred was also one of the guys was invited to do a workshop there, and we just kind of connected from there onwards. But how did you find your time at NTU just doing that workshop? Just a quick background check.
No, it's brilliant. It's something that I think is really important. I've got to be careful not to go on too much of a soapbox here, that I think sales should be trained at university. Actually, I think it probably should be trained at school. But certainly if you're doing any kind of business studies degree or anything where you need to persuade, influence, negotiate, communicate, that's everything then. so and that's what that course does, the Sales Skills University Sales Skills Academy. And that's why I wanted to get involved, because this is stuff that I talk about day in, day out. And to be able to share that with people who are going to be able to use that in the future, it's a real honor to do that. So I would always make time to do that.
Nice. No, that's really great. And then I think, and that links really well into your background, because I know you, for example, with Brandis, you've had it for over 20 years. And I saw at some point your offices were based in Dubai, correct? Or how did that go about?
Yeah. No, so that was or is something that we're looking at as part of kind of expansion. It's not really gone as fast as I want it to. In fact, it's gone dead slow. But okay. Kind of left it there as an indicator that, look, we do work all over, based UK, but the way we are now, the world's getting smaller. Whether it's working virtually, whether it's jumping on a plane, we can work anywhere with the right kind of project, right kind of people.
Nice. And just, following up from that really is that, like your background leading to that, you've also written several books. How have you found that balance between writing books and or perhaps what can you tell us about the 3 books you've written? Because I think I don't want to spoil it. I would rather let you talk about it more.
Yeah, I mean, I have been involved in training, sales training, for the last 24 years. You know, and I'm doing that. I've been around the world a bunch of times, 14 times. I calculated if we were kind of sat on a plane going round and round and round. And I worked in 37 different countries, trained 10,000 salespeople. And, you know, when you're doing that, you get a real insight into the challenges that salespeople have. I have to, because it's my job to help them deal with that. But I looked at it, and everybody in every industry, in every country says they're different. I wish I got paid when they said that. But the core issues people have, they do boil down to very similar things. And when I was looking at that, that's why I wrote the first book, which is like selling through partnering skills, because to deal with the main issues that people have, if we think like a partner and we behave in a more collaborative way, so you work alongside customers to help them figure stuff out together, then we will be more effective in where sales is at the moment. So I wrote that in 2020. Yeah, exactly. I know why you're laughing, because you know what happened in 2020. What a time to launch a book, eh?
I know, but to be honest, if anything, people had time to read books because everyone was locked in the house anyway. So it was probably the best time to read a book.
Oh yeah, all right one, because that's where I wrote the second one. Well,
at least you made the most of your lockdown, Fred. So you didn't waste any time.
I did watch all of Netflix. It's by the time I got to the end of Tiger King that I thought, you know what, Fred, use your time a bit better. Because no, the first book, collaborative, being collaborative in selling, it's not made it any less relevant. It's made it more relevant. But then there was other changes which happened due to pandemic. But then other things that are going to happen are going to happen faster. And so that's why, I got plenty of time. So I wrote hybrid selling. I wrote it pretty quickly, actually.
Yeah, definitely. That's interesting, really. And I think, with all these books you've written and everything, because I think there's a misconception, besides us getting to the myths surrounding salespeople, because I think now the word sales has a sort of like a lot of like negative connotations around that. But briefly, before we even get to that point, like what would you define sales as, for people listening? Because I think everyone seems to have their own idea of what exactly sales is, and what would your own definition be?
No, you're right. You're right. When people hear sales, and the guy called Daniel Pink writes about this in his book, where he says, if you say the word and ask people to come up with the first word that comes to mind, and he has this word cloud, and it's like sleazy, manipulative, pushy, ick. Is ick even a word? And you're right. That's a connotation that people have.
Yes.
And there are people that behave in that way, which is sad. Because the majority of good salespeople and well-trained salespeople do not behave like this. Sales now is about sense making. So in other words, it's helping your customers make sense of stuff. We live in a VUCA world. It's volatile, uncertain, complex, ambiguous. And that's what customers are going through. So if we can help them make sense of stuff, either from just a world point of view or what they're actually trying to achieve in their role, the job to be done, as a salesperson, we're doing a really good job. So we help people think. And that's why thinking like a partner, sitting alongside them and being this sense maker, because you bring an insight, a perspective, some extra information to the party, that's what professional selling is about. That's a completely different thing than trying to make somebody buy something they don't want or need, which is what people think it is. It's not. In a big deal, and the kind of MedTech deals and the stuff that listeners might be thinking about, it's helping them make sense of stuff and why the product, the thing that they're building, is going to help them do what they're trying to achieve and get them the outcomes that they want. A bit like doctors talk about outcomes, good salespeople talk about outcomes. What is the customer looking for? What's the outcome?
Definitely, that makes a lot of sense. I think, and I'm happy you touched on the first part that I mentioned regarding the negatives around sales. I remember when I finished university, finishing engineering, and I was like, no one really thought of sales really, because you thought it's you just think of the man on the road trying to pitch you something, trying to sell you something or to take your money. But actually, as I worked in research and development for a couple of years, I realized that no matter how good the product is, if no one knows about it, if your sales team is not as great, you're probably not going to do that great anyway on the market. So that's why I thought it would be very, vital for you to have a chance and, to come here and share some information and, share what you have written about, what you talk about, because I think you're the best person to ask that. And there's no better person that I could have think of in terms when it comes to asking what I call SMEs, which are subject matter experts on certain topics, and that's why it's really relevant for any industry, and in particular MedTech. So then, sort of like,
No, and mate, sorry to interrupt you, but it's vital for subject matter experts to understand sales.
yes,
Because they've got something that is so valuable that needs to be out there. If that expertise isn't kind of packaged well and they don't know kind of how to get in front of the right audience, then it's wasted. And that's such a shame. And they're usually smart people. You can't be a subject matter expert without being dead smart. So just a little bit of process, a little bit of understanding of how to do these things, you can give yourself the platform for making a bigger impact. Which is what I guess many people in this world are trying to do.
True, correct, and like leading on to the areas that perhaps you even like speak about, which is like partnering skills. I mean, like, what would you define as partnering skills, and how useful are they? Just to kick off the conversation from there onwards.
Well, actually, it's not what I define them as. So when I was getting towards the fact I realized I need to write a book, I was also doing some study into certain. I'm always learning, I'm always studying, and I came across this concept of PQ. Okay, so a lot of people will know IQ and EQ, emotional intelligence. Now, PQ are partnering skills. So I came across this, which a guy called Steve Dent, back in the sort of late 80s, early 90s, had been researching. It was when all the airlines and people coming together and there's these big alliances and partnerships and all this sort of stuff, and they go, oh, how can we do this better? And he researched it and said, well, organizations don't partner, people do. And here are 6 skills, which if you are good at this stuff, you'll end up, you and your organization is doing a better job. And I was looking at these 6 skills. I'm going, well, that's got sales written all over it, because if you bring these into the way that you sell, you'll collaborate better. You'll do a better job with customers. You'll have more interesting conversations to get to the point where we're doing stuff which is serving both parties and getting the outcomes. And so very briefly, the six elements are trust, win-win focus, comfort with interdependence. So in other words, your success is my success. Transparency, comfort with change. We sell change as salespeople. We need to be comfortable with it. And future orientation. Now, when you look at those things, we can break them all down, like I did in the book, and how you use them in the way that you construct your conversations with people that you want to work together with, because we can create that mutual benefit. You're a better salesperson. So look, that is to go into a deeper answer when you say what is sales. It's using that stuff to get to the point where we're all doing better as a result of the business we're doing.
True, and I think from the 6 you listed, I think the two most difficult ones are obviously trust and sort of like that interchangeable benefit, which is basically like a positive sum game. Because I think most people, like instinctively, they think that in every deal they have to go into, they have to be the only ones who win. But actually, it's about the best deals are deals that benefit both people or both parties or all parties involved. Then no one feels like they've been ripped off and everything. And if people learn to trust you, then they can always come back to you. So it's like, if you just get the first sell correct, it's like you build the lifetime of a customer. For example, they'll keep coming back to you because they already earned your trust, or or you've earned their trust in this particular way. So, but what would you say are the difficult aspects? Would you say the same 2 that I've mentioned right now, or what would you say are the most difficulties that most people will face when they're looking to build these partnering skills?
Yeah, no, great question. So let's pick up on trust, actually, because it can be difficult, but when you understand it, same as anything, actually, when you understand it, you can make it easier. And what I talked about in the book is actually, again, it's the trust equation, which is something that 3 Harvard Business School professors put together. And look, and you can tell that it's Harvard Business School stuff because it's just dead clever. So, if you want to get a pen and write down the equation, because they've formulated trust into an equation, which is T, trust, equals C plus R plus I divided by S. Okay, so trust equals credibility, know your stuff. Reliability, do what you say you're going to do. Intimacy, be sensitive and careful with people's information. Right, okay. I mean, that's not a big deal. Lots of salespeople do that sort of stuff. Why? Because then I'll sell more. Right. this is where the trust will get broken down, because it's divided by S. The S is self-orientation. So again, you don't need to be a mathematician to know if you've got a big number at the bottom, it's going to pull the whole score down. So when you're not orientated toward yourself, you're orientated towards others, you're doing it with other people's best interests at heart, that is your biggest trust builder. So really focusing on the other party, what they're trying to achieve, what's good for them, and doing stuff genuinely with that in mind, that is how you start to build trust. So it's easy to get your head around when you've got Harvard Business School people helping you. Actually doing that can sometimes be a bit tricky. And to then answer the question you did ask, the one which a lot of salespeople find difficult, because it's sort of almost been trained out of them, and we've got to put it back in, is this concept of transparency, which is sad because, we'd have thought that being open, being honest should come easy to us. But sometimes it's like, I can't tell people that. I can't really show them what's going on behind, or if we're not really good at something, I shouldn't be saying that sort of thing. Absolutely you should. And you can actually turn that into a positive. So once you get your head around actually being open, being honest, we'll get to better conversations, and then you can fix stuff together. And again, it's a big trust builder in itself. It is a hard one, but it's actually one that you'll benefit loads from if you're able to bring it into the way you work.
True. And I think the next one is actually quite an interesting one, especially looking at the area around MedTech, because obviously MedTech devices are devices that are going to help people who are obviously sick or having some sort of illness that they have to treat, diagnose, etc. And this makes it quite interesting then. And then especially when it comes to the ethics of it. And one of the things you talk about is ethical selling. I don't know, it may sound straightforward, but what's ethical selling, and how is this important for MedTech devices, especially looking at the nature of the product being sold?
Yeah, well, it's important to everybody. Everybody's selling anything, and then that's the third book. So the kind of the natural evolution of the books that I've written, it's kind of understanding where sales is going, what's making a difference, and what we should be doing now. And kind of with the ethical selling piece, put it in simple terms, it's about win-win-win. Okay, so people have talked about win-win for a long time. Yeah, company wins, customer wins, or customer wins, company wins. Yeah, because if it doesn't, it's not sustainable. Now, I've added the extra win in there because we're going customer, company, and your conscience. So in other words, that you can look yourself in the mirror because of what you're saying, what you're doing, how you're operating, and the way you go about business. You have integrity, and this is something that is kind of like a non-negotiable. And it will help you sell more because that is what people value. They want people who are straight up and honest and open, transparent. Let's go back to that. That comes into it. That will help them make an informed decision. So they're not going to push. They're not going to manipulate. They're not going to try to put them in a corner. Yeah, because they're helping them see where value is. And the customer defines value, not the salesperson. So again, this is a skill which people are selling ethically understand, which is that we need to help people recognize where the value is, not try and tell them, and then use the kind of way we communicate to let them come to that decision. So it's about using a lot of interpersonal skills, a lot of things which we bring to the party, but in a way that just it sits better for all concerned. And as a result of it, we're actually probably all going to be more successful. So it's just it's such an obvious way to work. But some people might find it difficult because it's it's what I call the Goldilocks effect. Goldilocks and the Three Bears. It's it's too hot, it's too cold, just right. Too hot is it's too hard. Oh, it's too difficult to do. I can't do these things. I need to learn new ways of working. It's no, they aren't necessarily new. They probably exist already. Just recognize them. And they're too soft. They're too. It's oh no, I'm going to be too passive. I'm going to be a pushover. I'll give everything away. I won't make any money. No, that's not the way to behave. Actually, sometimes we need to push back on customers because they're good. Challenge them when they're thinking. So they're a bit myths of ethical selling, but as a way in which anyone in any world, and MedTech, absolutely it will apply. It's how you're going to be successful, essentially.
Makes sense. And now that's just one question that I have on my mind, because I was reading some books on sales when I also started looking to do this transition. And there was this question in terms of there was one guy who argued that every purchase is an impulse purchase. So the idea that anyone who's buying anything have sat down, thought it through, is not necessarily how it is, because at the time when they do the purchase, it's an impulse. So then then the question that I had was, in terms of like closing, because obviously in sales is how you build the lead, sort of like nature the deal, and then closing. Is it, when it comes to ethical selling, would you say it's better to do like a soft close or a hard close? And just to let that out, a hard close is like when you're like quite a little bit aggressive, and whereas a soft close is when you a little bit more gentle around this. Like, I don't know what is more ethical from your years of experience in building up on this books you've written and everything around ethical selling.
Yeah, it's interesting you say impulse. For me, I would probably just use the word impulse differently. Impulse is like when you see a chocolate bar, which is always it's always when you check it out at the supermarket, isn't it?
Sure.
Oh, just pick that up and buy it. Just like I won't even think about it.
Yes.
I'm not sure MedTech is impulse. Like, I might just buy a CAT scanner. Why?
And it costs $500,000.
Thought it'd be fun. A new functional MRI. Yeah, let's have a couple of them. So maybe if he was talking about it being emotional, in that it's kind of the emotion drives motion. So actually my feeling, my instinct, my gut is saying this is what we need, and I'm going to rationalize it. The question about closing, I came across a really cool thing about closing. This guy called James Muir wrote a book called The Perfect Close. And that's what I talk about now whenever I talk about closing. I interviewed him on a podcast like you're doing now. I'm like, mate, come on, perfect close. Well, how could it be perfect? He goes, because it's 95% effective. I'm like, well, how do you know? He goes, well, because I've studied 1 million sales calls. I'm like, okay.
Well,
yeah, exactly. I thought, well, is it a bit like 80s technique? He goes, no, it's absolutely ethical, above board. He says, look, it's about understanding what a sale looks like, about going through the right steps, the right stages. It's understanding who you need to be speaking to and opening up their thinking and helping them get their head around stuff and presenting stuff in a way. And actually, you're going to close all the way along these, because sales is a series of commitments. I'm like, well, okay then, but perfect close then, what is it? What makes it different from being soft or hard or whatever? And he said it's the language pattern. And then we'll share the language pattern. It's, does it make sense for us to, and then you add whatever the next logical step would be. Does it make sense for us to meet the financial officer? Does it make sense for us to show this to the opinion leaders? Does it make sense for us to put this on a trial? Does it make sense for us to prepare a quote? Whatever the next logical thing would be. And you've got to know what it is, and it has got to be the next obvious thing. Because it's a closed question, and there's a bit of the psychology into it, but the point of it being closed is they're going to say yes or no. They say yes, so happy days. Let's do that then. Come on, get his diary out, let's meet him. If they say no, it's easy, because you say, well, what do you think the next step would be? I think we need to run a few numbers before we show it to the finance guy. Okay, well, let's do that then. How do we set that up? So this way of asking it, it's non-threatening. You've got to make sure that you understand what the next step is. Otherwise, you can't be asking it. It gives them a way out, and it helps you get to what the thing that's going to keep the sale advancing is. So it's actually very clever. And when I came across that about 5 years ago now, so I spoke to James a few times. That's all I train in closing. Is like, just why would I need anything else? Well, apart from the whole of sales to get to that point, because otherwise you can't use it. But yeah.
Okay, nice. I think that answers the question. And I think one of the things that we did discuss was also to hear your perspective in terms of like where sales was, like many years ago, where sales is today, and where sales will be going like in the future. Just to hear your thoughts on that as well, to hear how the evolution has happened over your career. How have you seen things change, and what do you think is the new way? Because I know obviously they've really changed. You rarely find people called sales managers now. They call them all kinds of things. They call them customer success or whatever, this kind of sweetened, sugarcoating euphemism they use around the words. So that's how it is today from my perspective. But but I'm sure it's more than that. The euphemism that has been used, it also expands into how the technology is giving like maybe a better edge, or whether it's more information, data analysis, data science, all these things that are building up. So I'm kind of curious to hear your thoughts on that. And obviously, please feel free to go as in detail, or as futuristic, non-fiction, fiction, whichever way you want to answer it. It's just to pick your brain.
Okay, so I'll give you a 3-minute answer, and then I'll give you a 3-word answer. No. Okay.
Okay.
So the 3-minute answer, basically, let's do a little bit of time travel. Let's go through the sort of the decades of selling and kind of what's been going on in the way in which sales has evolved. And we go back to the 50s. So this is before me. Before we even say anything funny. We'll go back to the 50s and look at what was happening in world of sales there. 50s, post-war, it was all about rebuilding. It was all about being effective. So was selling. So this is where we concentrated very much on sales process. Methodology, tried and tested ways of doing what works time and time again. Right, okay, well, that makes sense. We're not going to throw that away. We're going to keep elements of that. Some of the techniques, some of the structures, some of the methods might have changed. Right, how would you construct a social media post? Well, you wouldn't have thought about that in the 50s. It didn't exist. Now there is a new kind of template, a new method that you'd use, but it's still a method, it's still a process. When we go to the 60s, we're talking then about kind of the psychology of sales. So this is understanding personality styles. It's kind of how people think and how we can adapt our communication so it's more comfortable for them in the way in which we're communicating. Again, same. People are still the same. There's still the different, the fundamental personality styles. There's just a little modern spin on it where you can actually start to recognize somebody's style before you meet them. I know it kind of doesn't make any sense at all, but if you use some of the tech, so something like Humantic or Crystal Knows, you can plug it into LinkedIn and you can then kind of look and it'll say, oh, this person is a yellow, a red, a green, a blue. And you can start to, okay, I know how I need to deal with them. Okay. 70s, we then start talking about benefit selling. What's in it for me? That's what customers are thinking. They don't say it to you, but that's what they're thinking. So this is where we've got to be talking about the benefits to them of buying the thing we sell. This is where I'll come on to the 3-word answer later. But if you think about it, Theodore Levitt said, people don't buy a drill, they buy a hole. Actually, why do they buy a hole? They probably buy the hole in the wall to put a nail in, to put a picture on so they can remember when their wedding anniversary is so they don't get told off by their wife. Well, happened recently. So think about, and that's where a lot of people, particularly people making tech, they'll get so obsessed with the drill, the spinny, the sharpness, that all that. It's like, well, actually, people aren't buying that. They're buying the outcome. They're buying the thing that it helps them to do. Yeah, that's what I'll summarize in 3 words. 80s, then we sort of moved on, and this is where a lot of the kind of the bad reputation of selling came from, because it was this whole close, and the closing techniques, that hard close technique, and the kind of manipulative stuff, and the whole different ways of asking the question, basically. Yeah, that's where that came from. And objection handling. Customer says to me, you have to kind of fight them down, grind them into the dust until they say yes. Oh, it's terrible. Okay, what we can take is that sales is a series of commitments. I've said that already, but let's be careful in using some manipulative stuff, because that is what gets us a bad name. 90s, though, there was a sea change in sales, and this is the C for consultative. So as salespeople became more consultative, they helped people understand stuff, and they did this by asking questions. So questions are the core of good selling. When you ask somebody a question, you help them to think, and that's what we're doing. So asking questions in a certain formula, there's a certain way in which you ask it to help people understand where they are now, isn't where they want to be, and actually those states are probably further apart than they realized. That's consultative. Noughties, we then moved into value-based selling. So again, I mentioned it already, value, it's in the eye of the beholder. So we need to work out with them what they perceive as value, so that then we can position what we do as something that's going to be interesting. Noughties, then we started talking about, the word I used at the time was sales stature, because I didn't have any other word for it. But it's like being perceived as the go-to person who knows their stuff and that folk would want to deal with. I would probably say personal brand now, but I find that salespeople hate the word personal branding. They kind of immediately go to, oh, influencer. I'm not an influencer. So I call it enhanced reputation enhancement. So, yeah. And then the 20s is what I talked about. That's why I wrote the book. Is like, okay, so then collaborative selling, using all of these things. We don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. takes us to where we are now. And then, like we've already said, ethical selling. So being even more aware of how we're going about doing this stuff is the sort of step in which we're going. Obviously, AI is coming into play now. Is AI going to replace people? No, I don't think it is. I think it, again, like reputation, it can enhance people so that you can do far better homework, you can do far better research, you can prepare, you can build perspectives. So when you come to the conversation, it's a far deeper, richer, more valuable thing. If you're not doing that, you aren't going to be in the conversation because the customer will be doing that themselves. So they're like, hang on a minute, I know more than you now, and you're just coming along with a bloody catalogue turning pages for me, and I don't need that. I need stuff that's helping me get my head around things. I'm better prepared than you. Don't bother coming and talking to me again. So to take it to the 3-word answer that I promised, it's product or problem. Product or problem. What are you speaking about? If you're speaking about product, you are probably going to struggle. People can understand your product. They can look on your website. They can get what it does. It's the problem that they have. It's the thing that you help them solve. It's the stuff that they're struggling with. It's the better outcome that you can deliver from them. That's what the tech brings. It solves that. It gives them something better. And what will tend to happen, so I've seen this a ton of times, is that founders, creators, engineers, clever people making brilliant stuff concentrate on the clever stuff they've made. The shift to make is to go to the problem that that's solving and talk about that. A lot of people find this tricky. They're so close to the product. It's their baby, ultimately. Yeah. And they want to talk about their baby and tell everyone what a beautiful baby it is. Of course, nobody says, nah, your baby's ugly, mate. They just think, oh, God, I hope this person can't keep talking about their baby. Yeah. They will, we need to be shifting to problem. Now, when the tech was first being made, it's quite likely that people understood what the problem was they were solving. They started at the right place, but as they've got so invested into the features and the sort of the nitty-gritty, the details of the product, that's what becomes more fascinating. And that's where then mistakes are made. So if there's anything people take from this podcast, there's one thing, remember that phrase, product or problem, what are you speaking about? If you're speaking about problem, you will have more success, you'll have better conversations, and you will end up talking about product. But leading on product, you'll struggle. More and more.
Makes sense. And I think that really touches a lot, really. Thank you very much for your answer, Fred, because I think it touches on a lot of stuff, and particularly to kind of, just share my thoughts in terms of what you said, in terms of people linking the, product or problem. And it's better to talk about the problem. I think for a lot of MedTech people, they're quite fortunate, really, because you can have a product, but the product is probably working on an illness. So if you spend more time talking about the illness, and then maybe what the product can do, it makes it much more relatable than talking about the products and then trying to link it to an illness. Because funny enough, I was speaking to one of my friends the other day, like a doctor, and she doesn't really know much about the technology or what's out there, what's the latest thing, etc. But she knows the results she needs from the scans, etc., for her to diagnose whether the illness, to kind of see what stage the illness has progressed, etc. So therefore, it really hammers down on the problem in terms of how can you make it faster for the doctors? How can you make it more relative for the doctors? And I think if companies in this industry start to do that, they will see more increased success. And that's the information I think they need to hear, that it's not just about the product you have, but it's mainly about the problem you're working to solve. And and I think that makes a lot of sense, and it's really a huge value add. I don't know if there's anything else you'd like to add, Fred, to.
Well, no, let's just underline it even further, because I think it is such an important point. And again, I don't know the listeners, whether they're from big companies, smaller companies, founders, startup, whatever. Here is where there's a huge opportunity. Because many big companies don't get this. they don't do it very well. They will spend hours and hours and hours and hours training people in products. So what do the people who are training products do? They go, oh, I'll go and talk about the products. And then they'll find it harder and harder and harder and harder to go in and speak to people, which then make it harder for the rest of us, yes. But if you can then develop the reputation as being the person that goes in to speak about the illness, to speak about the outcome the doctor's looking for, to speak about the thing that is causing them an issue, or where they could make their life a little bit easier, a bit faster, a bit more accurate, whatever it is, that's what's going to open the door. So actually get good at doing that. It doesn't matter how big you are. You could be selling against sort of the giants in the industry, but you might be getting more airtime because you're having better conversations. It's well worth getting your head around this.
Well, nice. Thank you very much, Fred. I think that really touched on a lot of points and a lot of information that I think companies will find useful. And as I said, I'll be adding the link for your company and your books below this, so people can also reach out to you. But what's the best place to reach you? Is it LinkedIn, Instagram? WhatsApp, Facebook, or do you guys have a company website? Where do you guys get the most traffic from?
Best one is LinkedIn. Yeah, connect with me on LinkedIn. Actually, connect. Don't just follow. Connect. Mention that you've heard us talking. Yeah, call out the show. So I know what it is that you probably have heard. And if you've got any questions, if there's anything that might have said to me, and you might want to challenge me on something, you might say, hey, you're wrong, Fred, you're an idiot. Okay, fine, good. I'm always learning. I told you that. Or actually, no, I really want to go deeper in this. There'll be other things I can point you towards. At the moment, there's a little quiz at the top of the profile, which is problem or product, or product or problem. Actually, it's called that way around. It takes 60 seconds to do, and it'll tell you what you're talking about. If you haven't already worked it out and going, oh God, you've given us a bit of a slap there. But yeah, no, LinkedIn. I'm on other channels, but LinkedIn is the best one, because if you want to get into a conversation straight away, you can do that. And I'll try and help as much as I can.
True. Perfect. And also, I know you're really quick off your LinkedIn. So I think if anyone wants a quick response, LinkedIn is the best place. And I'll be putting that link as well below. So other than that, thank you very much for coming on the podcast, Fred.
It's my absolute pleasure. Thank you for asking. It's been really good fun.